Um, so if you are not familiar, Lisa's paintings are featured in our current exhibition at the museum, Good Sports, The Wisdom and Fun of Fair Play. Lisa's bright and colorful paintings tell stories of living in the American South, and we are so excited to have her here to share her inspirations and life experiences with us. So without further ado, Lisa, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Becca. Hello, everyone. I am completely elated to be with you this evening. It is wonderful to have the opportunity to share with you why I paint, my foundations, my joy, my love for painting, and just to share some of my artwork with you so that you can understand what has made me become the individual that I am today. And part of that is my foundation in Mississippi that I paint about. So here you can see I have a picture called The Pecan Pickers. And this picture is one of the few paintings that's really not acrylic, it's Max oil. And it's my favorite because of the fact that one of my favorites, you cannot determine whether or not it is sunrise or sunset. And I used to pick pecans with my grandmother. So I'm hoping to tell you some of the stories about the culture of the South and about the people that I grew up around that had such a wonderful influence on me and about some of the things that they would do on a daily basis. First, I would like to say thanks to the American Visionary Art Museum, to all of the wonderful staff. I had the opportunity to meet so many of the staff when I attended the opening of the exhibition Good Sports, The Wisdom of Fun and Fair Play. And I am so thankful for everything that they have done, not only to show my art, but for all of the artists whose work was featured or whose work is being featured during the exhibition. I want to thank Gage for first reaching out to me. Thank you, Gage. Becca for inviting me, and Diamond for inviting me to be a part of this activity this evening. Also to my collectors, Beverly and John, who first introduced my work to the American Visionary Art Museum by donating some of my art. Thank you, Beverly and John. And to all of you who have taken time out of your busy evening, stopped whatever you were doing, and decided to take some time to come and listen to me. Thank you. It means the world to me, and I am greatly appreciative of your time. I would like to start off by saying that I am a memory painter. I paint about growing up in Canton, Mississippi. I'm also a self-taught artist, folk artist. I've never had an art lesson other than what my elementary school teacher put me in when I was in elementary school. You know how you take the art classes in elementary school and in the first, second, third grade. So I'm a self-taught artist, and I paint about some of the scenes and some of the activities that I experienced growing up in Canton, Mississippi. So I am a memory painter. What does painting allow me to do? It allows me to reveal my deep love of the rural South. I always tell people I have a love affair with the rural South. I absolutely love the South, the country scenes. I feel at peace when I'm in the South. It allows me to talk about the influence of my paternal grandmother, Mrs. Lavinia Turns, who I will tell you about later on. She was my world, my heart, in addition to my parents. I can also tell the stories of individuals whose voices are now silent, people you may not see in magazines or on TV, some who you will never know about, but I can tell you their stories and what they did during their lifetime and within their culture through my art. I also have the opportunity to educate others about the culture and traditions of the rural South. Some I will share with you this evening. I can reach out and connect with others. I feel that my heart can actually touch the spirit of others because my art is also derived from my spirit. And my art allows me to relax and enjoy. At all times, I must have a canvas in my home. If I don't have a canvas, I said, boy, what will happen if I wake up or during the evening time, I get this desire to paint and I don't have a canvas. So I always keep a canvas in my home. But Painting allows me to be grounded with a component of my life that was very peaceful to me, that was very enjoyable to me. I enjoyed hearing, the religious music in my country church. I enjoyed being around my grandmother and walking in the woods with her and quilting with her. And that allows me to be grounded, allows me to be peaceful. So I always think it's important to reach back and to honor those who came before me, who played a very important role in the folk art world. And folk art is such a wonderful art form. It is historical, it's educational, and the majority of times, folk art is derived from the mind, the spirit, and the heart of those who are painting the paintings that you enjoy visualizing. So today I would like to pay honor to a few folk art memory painters that I really have enjoyed in regards to collecting and looking at their art. I don't have a Clementine Hunter, I want one, but she was absolutely wonderful. She's from Louisiana. And when I look at her paintings, Clementine Hunter, she would paint a house, as you can see, almost like it didn't have to be, everything did not have to be proportional in turn with Clementine Hunter. She could paint a rooster bigger than a house, and it was beautiful. She could paint a tree, whatever color she desired, and it was beautiful. I mean, she was just an absolutely fantastic primitive folk artist. And she's one of the individuals that I often look at and admire her art. Grandma Moses, to me, was one of the most fantastic landscape artists that I've ever encountered. She was from New York. And I have looked at many and many of her paintings. I have one of her books, just like I have one of Clementine Hunter's books that depict her art. And with Grandma Moses, I would just get carried away looking at how she would create her landscapes and incorporate her homes, the homes and the houses and the people within the landscape. One of the greatest landscape artists that I've ever seen. Bernie Sims, I had the opportunity to talk to her, and she was also a memory painter. And she depicted wonderful scenes in such a simplistic form. And one of the things that she told me, she said that what you consider to be maybe junk could be somebody else's jewels, could be priceless to someone else. So I had the opportunity to talk to her, which I will always cherish that conversation. And I have two pieces of her art in my home, Bernice Sims. Sarah Albritton. I visited Sarah Albritton when I was in Ruston, Louisiana. And her art was simply incredible. She was a memory painter who would paint very small people, and sometimes the acrylic painting of the trees would be rich and textured. But she would paint about life, working on the farm and growing up in Louisiana. Very outstanding memory painter and folk art painter. So those are some of the people that I would like for us to pay homage to and to remember, because those are individuals who came before me and they laid the groundwork for memory painting and for folk art and self-taught art. What is my art style like? I do not use established techniques. My art has a childlike simplicity to it. In fact, I had someone at my home about a month ago, and they had their children. And one of the kids said, young kid, I can do that. I said, you're correct. You could do it and probably do a better job than me. And I utilize paint brushes with very strong bristles. I'm very hard-handed. I write hard-handed. When I do cursive writing, the paper will curl up. So I like brushes that are very stiff, that give me a sense of control. My primary form of painting is acrylic on canvas. I have used Max oil once or twice. I've never used oil painting, strict oil painting, because I'm very impatient and I don't know how to paint wet on wet. Normally, when I paint the entire background and I incorporate the people onto the background that I have painted. Acrylic oil dries very quickly, so it's easy for me to put the people on in the houses without waiting a day or two. I don't know how to paint wet on wet. The size of my paintings, I normally don't do anything larger than 24 by 28 inches. So I paint on canvases. My most common size used to be 16 by 20, and now it's around 18 by 24 inches. I enjoy utilizing color. I try to depict feeling by utilizing color. I try to portray emotion by utilizing color, and I'll show you some examples later. My first paintings were on canvas board. I did not paint on canvas until a little later on during my artistic career. My first paintings were on canvas board. And I paint in the laundry room on top of the washing machine. So I have a little laundry room with a washer and dryer. And if you look at the top of my washer and my dryer is completely covered with paint. I started to put a picture of it, of how my washer and my laundry room is just completely covered with paint. And that's where I paint. I stand up with an easel. And basically I stand up the entire time that I paint in the laundry room. My culture is based on Canton, Mississippi. I went to school in Canton, Mississippi, um, went to school in Jackson, Mississippi, but my entire life, pretty much young life, was in Canton, Mississippi. And so every time we drive from Texas to Canton, I get excited when I see that sign that says, Welcome to Mississippi. It's like coming home because to me, Canton, Mississippi is home. I always say that one day I plan to retire and go back to Canton, Mississippi. I love the nature. I love the quietness of the South, the quietness of the rural country areas. I enjoy Canton, Mississippi. I also like pork skins, and I can find plenty of pork skins in Canton, Mississippi. This is a picture I took in Woodville, Mississippi, which is actually beautiful countryside. My husband's parents are from Woodville, Mississippi. I love surf and honey and I don't have collard greens and cornbread here though. That's my favorite food. Collard greens, cornbread, and I used to be a big fan of chitlins, okay? So I love all of that. And that's Mississippi. When I think about the countryside, the trees with the mosses, the dirt, the green, the greenery, the nature, the cows, the horses that you may see, the fields, all of that brings me a sense of peace because that is what surrounded me as a child. And I tell individuals that most of my art I paint through my vision and through my memory growing up as a child. So it's my perception of what I saw as a child, specifically my acrylic folk art paintings. It's through my vision and my eyesight as a child. So Canton, Mississippi, the Mississippi country is very dear to me. It's very peaceful to me. It's very special. Canton, Mississippi. Canton, Mississippi was incorporated as the county seat of Madison County in 1834, and it became a city in 1911. Here you can see the courthouse. And this was, I think, probably during Christmas time because I can see some of the red ribbons were a little bit before Christmas, but I'm not sure. But that's the courthouse in Canton, Mississippi. You will also find out that Canton, Mississippi is the movie capital of Mississippi. They filmed a movie called A Time to Kill. Everybody that I think I knew tried out to be in the movie. Okay. I saw people in the choir who were trying out for the movie. I saw people that I knew in the movie. And because of that movie, A Time to Kill, Canton, we called ourselves now the City of Lights, Hollywood. You can see lights everywhere, and I'll show you a picture of that. But one very distinguishing feature of Canton is that the majority of the buildings in Canton, Mississippi are old buildings, buildings from when Canton was first originated. And you can see here the style of the buildings still make you think of those westerns like Gunsmoke that you would watch on TV. They still retain that old time architecture. And if you look here, you can see additionally old style buildings. The majority of the buildings in the city of Canton follow this pattern. But in during Christmas time, if you go to Canton, you will see nothing but lights. Like I said, we're the city of lights. The whole square will be decorated with lights. I used to say, boy, what about the light bill? But I guess it doesn't matter for that short point in time because it's beautiful and it brings enjoyment to the people who are there and to the people who are visiting. There's also the railroad train station. My uncle, Hosey Tate, used to work, my daddy's brother worked at this railroad station for many years. It has Chicago on one side, New Orleans on the other. I utilized this station once, and that's when my husband and I were traveling to go to Chicago. So I enjoy looking at that train station in Mississippi. My influence. You know, the people in Canton had played a big role in making me who I am today. I tell people all the time that a lot of what I learned was not learned simply in the pages of an academic textbook. When I think about my love for people and my service to others, I think about my grandmother, Mrs. Luvernia Torrance. She was essentially early on in her life the equivalent of someone who was sharecropping. She had two sons and she picked chitin almost all of her working years. But my grandmother, in addition to her two boys, made a home for at least 10 other individuals during her lifetime. And if you think about it, she did not have much. But at some point in time, she gave someone a home, a place to stay, whether it was 2 years, 3 years, and she was able to do that. So I say that my love for others and my commitment from service is greatly influenced by my grandmother who died at the age of 98. I was her baby, and when she became older, she was my baby. My mother, Mrs. Bernice Cain, we call her the queen. She is a very strong individual. She is a very strong woman. She believed in making sure. I don't ever remember, probably but a handful of times, coming home and not having dinner done. She was a teacher. She would leave work and come home and cook. I leave work and stop by the barbecue place or the Jamaican place or whatever place I can stop by, Popeye's Chicken sometimes. But we didn't have that a lot. To go to the McDonald's or whatever burger place we had back then was simply it was rare. It was very rare. And my daddy here in the middle, who's deacon of the church, he's still head deacon. He's been a deacon ever since the age of 26 years of age. He's chair of the deacon board now. And from him, I tell my sons, that's why I have a son, 122 and 132. That's where they get their brilliance. My father is probably the most brilliant individual I have ever met in my life. You know, I was in New Jersey doing a postdoc, met Nobel laureates, but I don't think anybody is more brilliant than my father. He was a chemistry major at Jackson State University. He was the first person to actually use rats in experiments at Jackson State. When he left from going home, he only had two shirts and one pair of pants. He did not know where he was going to stay. He was going to stay and sleep at the train station until he could find a place to stay. But he ended up, when he got on campus, someone told him about a house that housed college students. For the first 2 years, he did not even buy a book. He could not afford to buy a book. He borrowed books from classmates and he utilized books from the library. He delivered papers in the morning, worked in restaurants during the evening times, and mowed yards during the weekends to put himself through school. Absolutely brilliant. He speaks German, Spanish. He can tell you the history of the Creek Indians because I'm 1/16th Creek Indian. He can tell you everything. That's my father. And so from him, I get my love of science. I get my advocacy for justice. because he was the first teacher, one of the first teachers to register to vote in Canton, Mississippi. So they were a great part of my influence. My grandmother's love. I've mentioned to you about my grandmother. My grandmother was my world, my heart. She died at the age of 98. In her eyesight, I was her queen. She used to work hard in the fields, or she would work hard keeping me sometimes when my mother and father were at school. But no matter how tired she was, my grandmother always had time for me. She never brought me one toy. I cannot tell you a doll. I cannot tell you any toy that she brought for me. But the time and the love that she gave to me, telling me stories, walking me to the country store, smiling at me, telling me that she was going to cook me eggs and these big red rose wieners because she was going to stretch my stomach, okay? That is what I remember about my grandmother. The toys, I don't miss them, never miss them. And when I was in the presence of my grandmother, I was always happy. So with my grandmother, this is my grandmother again. This is a mixed media picture that I did for the Kennedy Center. And here you can see a picture of her hands and my hands. We were holding hands sitting on the couch one day. And I took a picture of her hands and my hands. But my grandmother, we did everything that you could think of together. I picked chitin with my grandmother. I quilted with my grandmother. We set up and I would listen to her tell stories about my childhood. She would have multiple conversations with me. We took walks in the country with my grandmother. And like I said, she made me feel like I was her queen. So when I paint, one of the things I paint about is what I did with my grandmother. When I was a little girl, I was really, really a little girl at the time. She would sometimes sit me on her sack, let me sit on her sack and pull me along as she picked chitin. When I got old enough, and I was there either because we were out of school or I was visiting, she would give me a little sack when I got older, and she would let me pick chitin on my own. Now, a lot of people may have thought, yeah, it was hard work. The sun was it was heated. Your hands got little prickles sometimes, but to me, it didn't matter because I was with grandmother. And a lot of times when people think about picking chitin, what you have to realize is that this was a form of work for many individuals who lived in the rural South. And they took pride in doing their work. So a lot of times you'll see me painting children, little kids sleeping on a quilt. This is another painting called the Pickers. You can see a little child sleeping here, and that's symbolic of my time as a child and my experience as a child with my grandmother. One story that I remember, we were all sitting up under the tree doing lunch. And there was an individual who, they would bring their food. And there was an individual who did not have lunch that day. And instead of saying, hey, I don't remember his name, Jim, why is it you don't have lunch? What's happened to your lunch? You know what they did? Everybody got a little less hungry. My grandmama started saying, I'm full. I don't think I can eat anymore. Jim, you want this biscuit? Somebody else said, ooh, I think I'm so full. Jim, hey, take some of this for me. So Jim had food to eat. And I learned that to share with others in the chitin fields of Mississippi. So I take pride in being from the chitin fields of Mississippi. And that's what I paint about. I paint about quilting with my grandmother. My grandmother's sister used to sew, and she would give my grandmother pieces of cloth. I mean, there were different colors. I mean, because they're just straps from different clothes. My grandmother would buy this back lining, this back chitin lining, like it looked like a sheet, and she would get chitin, either from, the chitin gin, and she would put chitin in between the pieces that we would sew and the back lining. So I learned how to quilt from my grandmother, and she would let me help her and let me quilt. I didn't do that much at the time, but I bet you I can quilt. I can make a quilt. So I learned how to quilt from my grandmother. You will see me paint a lot of paintings about quilting with grandmother because quilting with my grandmother was a precious time to me. She would have a little pot belly stove and her bed, and we would sit there and we would quilt. This is another one called the quilters. I also call it the patch quilt because it's so many different colors. Quilting with grandmother. Another thing I would do with my grandmother, I would walk to the well. And this is exactly like the well that we would walk to. It was a concrete fixture with a little thing hanging down, and you could dip your bucket all the way down and turn. I didn't draw the thing that you turn with and pull your bucket up. So we would walk to the well and get water. Big Mama would also keep a tin barrel on the side of her house and catch rainwater. So my water that I would drink was water from the well or rainwater. The water that I would bathe in would be water from the barrel on side of the house. And so some of the best water I've ever tasted. And so that I used to enjoy walking to the well with my grandmother. This is the second picture painting that I've ever painted as a so-called really serious artist. My first painting was a painting of a pastor in the pulpit, but this is the second one. I have it at home. And this is called Talking with Grandmother. My grandmother, in addition to quilting, we would sit in her bedroom. You can see the bed here, the little pot belly stove, cast iron stove. And she would tell me stories about how her father would shoot the blackbirds, about working in the country, about her mother, about her grandmother. And I would have a little palette and I would sit there and I would be listening to everything that she would say. And so this one is called Talking with Grandmother. Strangely enough, I don't remember painting another painting entitled Talking with Grandmother. I do a lot of quilting, a lot of cooking. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's time for me to do another one, but this is called Talking with Grandmother. Church and spirituality was a big part of my life. It was the foundation of our community. My father, like I said, was very heavily rooted in the church. And I don't remember 10 Sundays, I'm sure it may have been more than 10, not going to church. And my father would not ask me twice to get up and go to church. If he had to ask us twice, we probably would get a spanking, okay? And we learned after the first time that we didn't jump up and get up. So it only took us one time to learn. So I would go to church, and this is the picture of, and of course it was bricked up. It was pretty much wooden earlier on, but this is the only picture I have of the old church that I grew up in, and this is the new church. But the oldest picture of it was pretty much wood. I was pretty much wooden, and then they started to brick it up. And so in church was a place where we learned about the spiritual foundations of life, but it was a place of socialization. People would come to church, and after church, they would talk on the church ground. You would find out about the latest news. You would know who was ill, who was getting married. You would learn a lot at church. So this is called evening service, and one of my art collectors has this picture. And Sunday morning was a time to get up and go. This is Sunday. They're getting ready to go to church with grandmother. And that's Sunday morning. And it was a special morning. We would dress up and in our socks and dresses, and the ladies would wear those beautiful hats. Almost every lady in my church who was, I could say, a mother and above and older wore beautiful hats. My mother has about 15, 20 hats now. I haven't worn them, but I'm thinking probably I may one day. And so we would get up and go to church, and we would praise and worship. We would shout. As a young girl, it was very fascinating for me to see people shout because sometimes the young kids, we would sit together. You know, I saw my cousin who lives out of state about a month ago, and I said, "You were my sitting partner." And one of the things that was very fascinating is when the ladies would get up and shout, and somebody would run to hold them or put some smelling salt by their nose. I mean, for young girls, for young kids, that was different. That was different. The ladies would shout, they would praise God, the preacher would pray, the choir will sing, and that's what I'm painting here about praise and worship. This is a special painting, and it's called the Candy Lady. I had a lady in my church. Her name was, we called her Cousin Torch. Okay, Cousin Torch. She never said anything. I cannot tell you one word that she whispered. But her sole job, and she could talk, she just never said anything. But her major role was every Sunday after Sunday school, she had this, it was like a band, a rubber band with peppermint candy, sticks of peppermint candy. And she would give out peppermint candy to the children in Sunday school. I don't remember her saying anything, but I remember the peppermint candy. That was her role. And it was an important role because if we didn't enjoy anything else at the time, being young, about Sunday school, we looked forward to going to Sunday school because we knew we were going to get peppermint candy. And so, and I call this painting the Candy Lady. There were two occasions that were very special, and I'm Baptist in the Southern Baptist Church, and I'm sure in other religious churches or denominations also. And one was the country baptismal. I was baptized at the age of 9 in a pond. The pond wasn't this close to the church, it was far away from the church on Deacon Bay Davis's place. And we would dress up with a white hat, hood, white gown, and we would all go and be baptized. And pretty much what I remember, one of the things I remember looking at is that on the opposite side of that bank that day were cows. And I was busy, I was looking forward to getting baptized, but I was busy looking at the cows on the opposite end of the bank. You know, it was a big, huge pond, not a small pond, but a huge, huge pond. And so that was that. I remember that. But we would have our umbrellas and people would sing Wade in the Water. If I could sing, I would sing. Some of you may know that song, Wade in the water, children, wade. I can't say in the water, children, wade in the water, children. God's gonna trouble the water. And I'm so glad I've been redeemed. We would sing, we would have umbrellas. It was a beautiful occasion. And it was a time of rebirth. It was a time when you would be born again. The symbolism was you're born again into a new person, you know, a new person in Christ. It was beautiful. And then we would go back, put on our beautiful clothes, new clothes, and then we would be given the right hand of fellowship. Everybody would march around and shake your hands. And this is called country baptismal. This is another country baptismal. I will do a lot of country baptismals because it was a very wonderful occasion. My grandmother, I actually have her baptismal pictures. Well, she wasn't baptized. She didn't join church until later in life. So I have pictures of her. I don't know, remember what age, whether it was about 70, 75, but I have a picture of her being baptized. I have multiple pictures of her baptismal similar to this. Another very important thought for us in the Baptist church is the idea of resurrection, rising, another symbol of being reborn, new birth. And I used to go out with my father, and the deacons would clean the graveyard. And I remember that they would be at the graveyard and they would be telling stories because they knew everybody who was in the graveyard. You know, most of the people who were buried there were family members. And they would say, "Oh, John gonna get up one day. I could see John getting up and flying up to heaven." Or they would say, "So and so buried here, but I don't think they're going anywhere." You know, they would be cleaning the graveyard, telling stories, and talking about the rapture, the resurrection. And sometimes I would be out there with my daddy. And so what you see here is you see a picture of the rapture. And you see the angels are coming down and they're taking people up to heaven. The thing that I try to capture the most about the rapture is that movement. I'm trying very hard to show that movement. People are, kind of curved, like this guy is bending. And also, you can see now I have begun to do more with color. If you remember the second painting that I told you that I really painted as a serious artist, it was basically brown, not a lot of blending of colors, but beginning to blend colors is something that I started to, this is an older Rapture painting that I started to pick up on and that I enjoy doing. This is another Rapture painting. Of course, I'm trying to capture movement. I blend colors. Here you can see me blending. And if I were painting this, if you came to my laundry room, the first thing you would see would be only a background. You would see the sky, you would see the bushes, you would see the ground, and that would be it. And then I go in and I incorporate everything else into the painting. Now, I painted some other scenes that are religious. I painted a Jesus walking on water. I've also painted a crucifixion, but this is the Noah's Ark. I've only painted about 3 of these paintings because I don't like to paint Noah's Ark, and I'm gonna tell you why. I have looked at a picture of Frederick Douglass and painted Frederick Douglass. I have looked at a picture of Sojourner Truth and painted her. I cannot stand to look at a picture and paint anything from a picture. I don't have the patience, and I'm not that much of a realistic painter. So when I paint a Noah's Ark, for some reason I feel like the animals must look like similar to real animals. So I'll go and get an encyclopedia and say, okay, what does the elephant look like? What does the lion look like? What does the giraffe? And here I am trying to mimic that, and I absolutely hate doing it. Okay, so that's why I don't have many Noah's Ark, because I won't take the time to do it. But I painted this based on what would my family be doing if we just landed after being on the water for a long, long time. And I figured we would be having a good time. I would be chasing the pig because trying to catch the pig, say we need to have some roasting going on. We would be just enjoying each other, shouting, having a hallelujah good time. And that's my perception. Somebody here is painting and looking at the angels. And actually, if you look here, I painted this painting for someone who had lost their dog. So this dog is the actual picture of her dog that I painted into the picture for her. But if I try to paint realism from my head, I can't do it. If you ask me to paint a dog, just not looking at a picture or a photograph, I can't do it whatsoever. And that's strange. Social life. Another thing that was very important for me as a child growing up is the social life that we enjoy. And and part of social life for me was playing with kids in the country at my grandmama's house. My grandmama's house had a she had a chimney on one side and a window. And on that side window, she could look and she could see everything that we were doing. And I remember we had kids from the other surrounding homes, they weren't as close as this house, but that would walk and come, and we would all play out together, swing, play touch football. We would play baseball. Now, this is really funny. As we grew older, for some reason, we loved to play touch football, the guys and the girls, meaning that you had to tackle each other, right? You had the football, you would tackle each other just like in real football. So one day, I guess my grandmama noticed that the football was in one place and the girls and the boys were in another place, just laughing and having a good time rolling around on the ground. So when I came in the house, she said, okay, you can't play football anymore. You can't play that type of ball anymore. So, but she was watching out of her window and looking at us. And that's a true story. She said, no more playing that type of ball anymore because we weren't concerned about the ball as much as we were grinning at each other. Okay. And she noticed that. So interesting. Also, the juke joints. I've been in one juke joint. I think it was when I was in college, and I actually went in a juke joint when I was in Jackson, Mississippi, but we had them all the time in the country, all the time. Canton had a couple of clubs in town before a hurricane came and destroyed a lot of them. But My father told me about one that they call the last chance. They called it the last chance because he said if you went in it, it was a slim chance that you may come out. And so you can see here, I love painting juke joints and people, it was pure fun. It was pure fun, social fun. People would go have a good time. Somebody may get a hurt jaw or something, but that was the most of it. Most of the time, people were just having a good time. Here you can see the two women are fussing over this man. Uh, it was all ages, some man on a walking stick trying to get to the juke joint. So it was fun. Inside the juke joint, we danced, we laughed. They had a wonderful time. It was wonderful, called Ladies' Night. And then family reunions. Boy, we enjoyed family reunions. I mean, barbecuing, different family members, their different dynamics, their different personalities. So I've painted quite a few pictures demonstrating either family reunions or family picnics, a wonderful time, an enjoyable time. And then Sunday dinner. My mother's mother, my daddy's mother, the one that I was extremely close to, was not much of a big cook, but my mother's mother was a cook. She cooked everything from oh, you name it, she cooked it. For Christmas, we would have deer, we would have possum, we would have chitlins, we would have chicken, we would have anything she had that you could call a meat. We had turtle. I've had turtle. I don't know how many of y'all have had turtle. Very fatty meat. And she would make all type of cakes and pies. She even made this cake called black cake that we don't know what it was, but you know, we looked at it, but it was black cake with black frosting. And but even dinner time was a time for people to get together and have fun. And sometimes the pastor would come over. And when the pastor would come over, he got royal service. He got first dibs on everything. Whatever he wanted to eat, the pastor was treated like royalty. And this is called Sunday dinner. Work. The work that I remember a lot, as I have talked about, has been pretty much um, kite picking. A lot of people were teachers, preachers, a lot of them worked in factories, some worked in stores. But I remember the chitin pickers a lot because of my grandmother. So this one here, I don't do a lot of this is a 12 by 20-inch up and down painting. I don't do a lot of full figured people. I paint small people, okay? My people are normally small, but this is one of the few paintings that she's tall. You know, it's almost the entire canvas. And this painting actually won a social impact award. It's called Reflecting. This is a mixed media. In 2020, and I'll talk to you a little bit later, I wanted to do collages like I think Ramir Bearden, those type of collages where you have bits and pieces of everything. I just wanted to experiment as an artist. So I tried. I got some wood and put stuff on a painting. I got photography and put stuff. I was putting stuff, trying to put stuff everywhere, but I ended up going back to storytelling. I just wanted to tell a story. So this here is a combination of photography. It's a combination of my folk art background and a real chitin. And it's called Reflecting. And I'll talk to you more about the mixed media in a little bit. Also, wash day. As a young girl, I learned how to wash clothes by looking at my mother and looking at my grandmother. In fact, my mother and father, they had a washing machine and a dryer. But sometimes, even though we had a washing machine and a dryer, my mother would still put the clothes on the line in the back of the yard because she said it was nothing better than having clothes to dry in the sun. And so, you know, so she valued having clothes drying in the sun. So we learned my grandmother had a big old pot iron like this, and she would wash some of her clothes and hang them on the line. And so, as little girls, we learned how to wash clothes by actually looking at our grandmothers and our mothers. Chicken for dinner. Now, it's not work, but it was a source of food. My grandmother used to raise chickens. I used to get in trouble because one of my favorite pastimes was chasing chickens. And she used to tell me, don't chase the fat off my chickens, leave my chickens alone. Soon as she stuck her head in the house, I'll be out there chasing the chickens, okay? Watching them run. That wasn't nice, but that's what I used to do. And so, but I used to watch her actually, take a chicken and prepare it for dinner. And that's what I'm showing here. She would wring the neck of the chicken, and then she would prepare that chicken, pluck it and prepare it, and we would eat it that night. And this is called chicken for dinner. This is one of I painted about 4 paintings on artist paper. And this is one of the few paintings that I painted on black artist paper. And the fun thing about this is I was able to use broad paint strokes, just broad, because the darkness of the canvas actually helped to make some of the painting. So it was a very fun painting to do. I think I may do it again. Fishing. Both of my grandmothers, Mrs. Ella Purnell and Mrs. Lavernia Turns, uh, fished, but my mother's mother was the one who fished the most. So I would go fishing with my mother's mother, Mrs. Ella Purnell, and we would fish and we would catch these little small bony fishes that had a lot of bones in them. They were small. We would go back to the house, clean them, and cook them. And although it was fun for me, I don't know how much fun it was for her, but it was still in a way work because this was a way of eating from the land. The land provided their food, and this is called fishing at Fire Creek. Country life. I love country life. These are symbolic of row houses. Little houses that would be side by side. Some people call them shotgun houses because they say that you could shoot through the house and the bullet would go straight out the back because it was so small. And so these are people just in the country, the wagon, somebody chasing the wagon, the dog chasing the little boy, the quilt on the line, working in the yard, just having a wonderful time, country life. This painting here, Country Life, actually belongs to Matthew, who is an artist and an art collector. I think Matthew may be online. Okay, if you're there, wave your hand, Matthew. He's actually a blooming artist, wonderful artist. But this is his painting. And this is another rendition of a wonderful artist, Matthew. If you have a chance, you look for Matthew, you got to see Matthew's art. This is another rendition of, country life. The people, here's the cotton fields, the church, fishing, the little girl swinging, people just in the wagon, the grandmother just finished putting clothes on the quilt, just enjoying the tranquility and the peacefulness of the country. I love it. I love it. I feel like I'm there. You can see how excited I am, okay? I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm there. One thing I didn't put in was I painted paintings about school days. And I see one of my classmates, Fran, there that's online. Hello, Fran. But school days, I've painted pictures about going to school also. But those were basically from stories from my grandmother, not from my going to school. And also the secret garden. This painting is called the secret garden due to the fact that no matter how you can see on one half, you can see the blandness of the dirt. But on the other half, you can see the flowers. That no matter where we were, there was always this place of beauty that we could find as kids, whether it was playing in a tree or being in a flower patch or walking down a road with trees and flowers on the side. It was always a beautiful place that we considered our own. And this is why this is called the secret garden. Now, I'm going to tell you quickly about my mixed media. Like I said, I painted mixed media because I wanted to do collages. This is the cover of a book by Remika Brigham Risher, who is a wonderful poet. And I did this cover for her book. I normally get my images from the Smithsonian Institute that has a free to use site, and also the library. Well, it's called the Smithsonian Open Access, and the Library of Congress has a free to use site. And I try to make sure that everything I use is public domain. But anyway, what I do is I combine my folk art painting with the complexity of photograph and with other mixed media. And so when you look at it, you don't really see, you can't, to me, I don't say, well, that's folk art and that's photography. It makes one image. And I use color to depict emotion. When I'm really having somebody thinking hard, I use a lot of orange and red and yellow for the skies. This is called tired. Okay, this belongs to an art collector also. This is called the water bucket. And this piece, each of the individuals here, each of the people, the individual people are placed on this by this house, including the boy. This came from a story my father told me. And you can see the water bucket that I placed on the porch. He said that when he was growing up, they would have a water bucket and a dipper. And everybody would drink out of this water bucket, but you could only drink out of this water bucket if you were considered to be a man at the age of 18. And he would pass by wanting to drink on out of that water bucket. And you could see this little boy wanting to drink out of the water bucket, but they didn't do it because, or he can't do it because he's not considered a man. But once you were considered a man, you could get the dipper, sit on the porch, and drink out of that bucket. My father said that dipper would have snuff stains on it. And you may say, I don't want to drink out of that dipper, but it didn't matter because it was honorable. You were considered to be a man. And this is called best friends. Two men sitting on a stump. My sky symbolizes, you don't see a lot of red here or orange because it's peaceful. It symbolizes peacefulness. But you can see how I blend my yard, the colors in the yard, to bring out emotion, to bring out emotion. And I don't care. I can paint my trees. I'm a folk artist, self-taught artist. That gives me the right to paint my tree purple, green, black, whatever color I want to. I enjoy that. So it's like, as I start to close, it's like Oprah Winfrey says, you can be whatever you desire to be. You can make a positive impact. It is my desire through my art to remind people of times and of people who were culturally rich, who were unified, who helped each other, who didn't have to lock their doors. So if you didn't have anything to eat, they gave you something to eat. A time where children were respectful, children played together. We stayed from morning. When we finished whatever we had to do, we were outside from almost midday until nighttime playing and enjoying each other. A time where values, a time that was value driven, love, spirituality, connection, all of that was important. So on my own, this is what I do. I create. It works. If no one paid, if I didn't ever sell a painting, if no one liked my paintings, I would still paint because painting allows me to be grounded as an individual, to take joy in my memories, to feel good, to be happy, to educate, and to touch some of the hearts of individuals who experience some of the same things that I experience. That's what painting allows me to do, and that's why I paint. And I remember one day I felt like God told me, if you ever forget the true meaning of why you paint, then your paintings will cease to exist. I remember that. And so I try to always remember why I paint and the true meaning behind why I paint. As a child, I dreamed. I dreamed of many things. I dreamed of, what I was going to be, what I was going to do. I dreamed of a lot. And as an adult, I still dream. And I dream of one day sharing my art with the world, like I'm doing here. That's why I'm so excited. I mean, I'm excited. If nobody else is excited, I'm excited on the opposite end. I dream of sharing my art with the world, of telling individuals how important. That's why the American Visionary Art Museum is so wonderful, so spectacular. It shows people how important folk art, primitive art is, self-taught art that comes from the soul, the vision, if you're a visionary painter like Murtis West, and the spirit of individuals. Art that can reach out and not only touch the intellect, but can touch the heart of others. And that's what's so important about self-taught art, about folk art, and about the American Visionary Art Museum. I also have an art exhibition in December at the Art of Noise in Washington, D.C. Those of you who are close, that's owned and curated by a wonderful curator and owner, Mr. Adrian Ferguson. So please, if you're in the area, stop by and visit my art exhibit in DC. I have some smaller ones on the way, but this one is definitely planned for September in 2025. I have enjoyed. This is one wall of my gallery in my home. I have three walls, and this is one wall, and all of them are full of art. I have approximately, if I were to count all of my paintings, those are that I don't sell and those that are for sale, I have approximately about 80 paintings in
Oh.
my home that are mine. I also have art by Bernie Sims. I have art by Woody Longs. I have art by Mouse Tolliver. I have art by Jimmy Lee Setup. I have art by Aline Harris. I have art by, I think I said, Bernie Sims. I have art by Sarah Albritton, the lady that I showed you. Some of the art I got when I was on the road with certain galleries, like let me see, we had a lot of a lot of art galleries that would carry my art to different places like Roth. Some of you may know Roth. He was a gallery owner in California. Marshall Weber Art Objects that was in, I think, in the Alabama area. We would go to Kentuck, or we would go to, yeah, the Kentuck Festival of the Arts and other art shows, and the artist was there. So Woody Long actually gave me one of his paintings, you know. The others I brought at a reasonable price, but I still would love a Clementine Hunter. So that's one I don't have, or Grandma Moses, one I may not ever get. Okay. But I love that. So are there any questions? Any questions? I would be happy to answer them.
Hmm. Let's take a look. First of all, thank you, Lisa. I think I wish we all could give you a round of, maybe it's a silent round of applause. Um, wow, I just love listening to your stories, and we have a lot of comments. You have a lot of collectors in our Zoom tonight. Thank you for your presentation. Um, Somebody has three paintings in their bedroom. I can enjoy looking at them every single day. Um,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of my collectors out there.
yes. Um,
And
let's see.
those who just simply like looking at my art, that's fine. And those who just are here to hear me talk, go ahead.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Are there any subjects, different subjects that you're thinking of exploring next in your work?
Yeah, there are things that I want to do more in terms of kids playing, like kids playing with the water hose, happy birthday. Um, Let me tell you this, I will paint a similar theme. Like you may see multiple quilting paintings, but I can guarantee you that you will never find a painting that's exactly like another painting. If I
Right.
paint a baptismal, it has to be different in a couple of manners from another baptismal. So I would never paint the same exact painting. They must be different. If they're not different, then they will not be original. So I
Right.
think I'm going to continue to explore people walking in the country. I used to do the slaughtering the pigs, you know, and stuff like that. I probably will go back. I paint a lot of paintings that make people smile a lot. Now, people say, why are all of your people smiling? You know, some people didn't have a wonderful time in the South when they were growing up. But you have to remember that they're smiling because I paint a lot through my vision as a child. All of my acrylic paintings, around 99% of them are from my vision and my aspect as a child and being surrounded by my grandmother and the people in my community. And I was happy being with my grandmother. You know, I was happy in the cotton fields with her. I was happy in my country church. And that's what you see. People, I show the beauty, the beautiful part of it. My mixed media, though, will take you deep. Let me tell you this, the acrylic paintings, you're drawn to the story, the scene, the story. The mixed media paintings, if you go back and if you were to look at my mixed media paintings, you are drawn to the individual in most of them. My mixed media will focus on the person rather than just a story. So if I go deeper in any aspect, it probably would be my mixed media. I painted a painting called a mixed media called the Great Migration, about people migrating from the South to the North. And in the painting was a broken railroad. And in that broken railroad symbolizes that everybody who went from the South to the North, it wasn't that easy once they got to the North. Okay, it still wasn't that easy. They still had to struggle. So if I do any struggle pieces or any in-depth pieces that really transcend the beauty that I depict through my acrylic, it probably will be through the mixed media.
Here's another question. As a painter, observer, and collector of art, what are you drawn to in others' art? What moves you to purchase or acquire a piece for your own personal collection? That's a good question.
You know, the person, well, Janita Rogers. I don't know if any of you have heard of Janita Rogers. They used to call her she made things out of mud. I have one of her paintings. Her story is the person that will attract me. Also, color. I'm a color person, and the story. So, story, color, and the individual. I love color. I love the story behind the art, and I like the story of the individuals who paint the art. I have a Meredith West because I just think she was very interesting. I have a Sybil Gibson. She was very interesting, and her art was different, the way that she used these pastel-like colors. So, it's the story, the person, and the colors.
Next time we need a tour of your house, Lisa.
Come on, please. Let me know so I can clean up give me about 2 weeks notice. But please come because my whole entire house is basically art. My art, the art of others, is basically art. Everywhere you look, you will see art. I love art. Art is my passion, it's my heart, it's part of my world.
That's amazing. Do you ever see yourself not working in the laundry room?
The reason why I started working in the laundry room is when I would paint on, I'm a very messy painter. Some people are very neat. They have the paint brushes here. They have the paint there with the tops on the paint. If you go in my laundry room, you'll see paint with no tops. You'll see paint brushes strawed all across the washer and dryer. And the reason why I started painting in the laundry room is because my floors in my home before I started painting all had paint on them. I would paint in the kitchen, paint wherever I could find a table, and you would see specks of paint everywhere. So when I got my floors changed finally, I said, okay, I got to find a place where I can paint and not worry about paint being everywhere because I'm not the neatest painter.
Are you able to paint through all emotions, or do you need to be in a particular mood to paint? That's a good question.
I can, if I'm extremely tired, sometimes it's very hard for me to paint if I'm very exhausted, very tired, or thinking about a lot, that I'm dealing with either at work or, it's hard sometimes. A lot of times I have to be in a more peaceful mood to bring out that joy, to bring out the beauty that I feel because it comes from within, or to be creative. Let me say, use the word creative. I'm most creative when I'm most peaceful. And a lot of times, though, something will come in my head. I could be driving home. And this is when I'm most creative. A picture will come in my head. And I will say, golly, I have to go home and paint that. I must paint that. And that's why I have to have a canvas, because when that creative moment come on me, that picture comes in my head, I have to put it on canvas. And I'm also a very impatient painter. Some people like to take 3 days to paint a painting. Most of the time, I will start on a painting and I will not stop until I complete it. I've been up to like 2 and 3 o'clock trying to finish a painting, and sometimes I'll go back, but most of the time I'm a very quick, fast painter.
Are your children artistic?
My youngest son he used to do a few paintings and sculptures. So I would say yes, Malcolm. My oldest son, Marcus, is a fantastic creative writer. His gift is writing. My younger son is also a game designer. So he uses his creativity in terms of designing games. My oldest son is a writer. So he writes. Nobody wanted to go into science, okay? So that creative side came out.
Let's see. Do you have currently have any artists that you look to that inspired your mixed media paintings? Diamond noticed the muted tones in the collage figures compared to the colorful ones in your memory paintings. So it's interesting to compare the two.
Della Wells is a wonderful collage painter. Ramir Bearden's, one of years ago. There are a couple of people out there that I see, but Della Wells is somebody that I really like looking at her painting. There's somebody called Evita that's out there now. I'm blanking on her last name. I've just found out about her. She's a wonderful paper painter. I have uh, Mr. Shelton, who's in the New York area. I don't know if he's on. He's a wonderful collage mixed media painter. So there are quite a few people out there that I like. I like looking at their work. I now have another young lady. I brought her painting from her. I have it. I need to get it from New York. She's a wonderful painter, mixed media, well, more so collage paper art painter. Wonderful painter also. I have to get your name and send it to Becca so she can share it with you all. Your name.
Lisa, can you share the date for your exhibition? Or go back to that slide some people have been asking about.
Yes, it's going to be September. Mr. Ferguson and I don't know if he's online. We have not set the date yet, the exact day, but we will be doing that soon.
I see. Got it.
Okay. But it's going to be in September. As soon as I get that information, I would share it with you, Becca, so that you can disseminate it to those who are online today.
Yeah,
But
that
it's
would be
definitely
great.
going to be in September.
Awesome.
This is
Um,
so much fun. I just enjoy telling my story. It's just wonderful. I'm so thankful for this opportunity. Thankful.
I think we all are loving hearing all your stories and learning about your inspiration. And your paintings are just so heartfelt and powerful. This is a good question. First of all, do you make quilts? Have you ever made a quilt? And would you ever think about making them as a companion to go with your paintings?
You know, I've never made a big functional quilt. I've quilted a little painting and I didn't show it. It's a mixed media painting and it has the lady in it that I painted and it has quilted a little quilt that she's holding in her lap that I put together. Okay. But I've never quilted a functional quilt. I can because I did it so much with my grandmother. It would be interesting to see. I don't know. It would be very interesting to see could I make an artistic quilt. I can do one a patch quilt, just for functional purposes. But to do an artistic quilt, it would be interesting to see how and if I could do that. I've never tried it before. Never
Hmm.
tried it. It'd be interesting. Something different to think about.
Yeah,
Now, one thing I can tell you is that when I'm painting, I kind of tone out everything else. I can have food on. The worst thing for me to do is to try to cook and paint. Every time I try to cook and paint, I burn stuff. So I'm completely in my zone when I paint. I tune out everything.
I
And
think,
I have
yeah,
music, except music. Sometimes I put on some Stevie Wonder, and paint to music. I love painting sometimes to music or something spiritual.
yeah, these are all the pro tips that we need to hear. Let's see, have you ever thought about writing a book about your art and your stories together?
Yes, I have a book. Let me go all the way back. If I go all the way back here, let me go back to the slide. And I think because I have a picture of the book on the slide. I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Here's my book, Art of the Spirit, Author House Publishers. And I produced, it's a small book, but I wanted to explain to people why I painted. And that's why I produced this book to talk about my encouragement, my motivation for painting. And that's what the book is about. And it has quite a few of my older paintings in it. It doesn't have any of my modern day. I put out this book years ago. In fact, I have been saying that I was going to go back and produce another book, a larger book. of my paintings. And I plan, hopefully I will do that soon, but it's called Art of the Spirit. It's published by Author House Publishers. It used to be in Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. I think you still can find a copy of it.
Yeah, I just dropped the link to your website that has a link to the book where they can purchase it. So, excellent. All right. Are there any final questions?
And is Mr. Ferguson, are you online?
Let's take a look. Mr. Ferguson. Hmm.
He, he may not be. I was going to talk to him about a date, but I will let you know. Any other questions? See, I could sit here all night long.
Let's see if we have any other questions, but it's been great to spend this time with you. And, I'm speaking for everyone in the Zoom, including our docent volunteers who like literally get to talk about your artwork every day to, visitors of all ages. And now they'll be able to, share all the things that you've shared with us tonight. So we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again to all of you, those who are working at the museum, to my collectors who have pieces of my art, to those who just simply enjoy listening to me talk tonight, to those of you who just like looking at my art on my website. I'm just thankful to everybody who spent any amount of time sharing my creativity. So thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Please don't hesitate to email me, to reach out to me. If you want to talk further, I'm available. Just simply let me know. Thank you. And thank you again, Becca and Diamond, and to all of the individuals at the museum for giving me this opportunity and for allowing my art to be on the wall with some of the most outstanding artists of all times, like missionary Mary Proctor. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're lucky to have your work up in our Good Sports exhibition. If you're planning on visiting to see Lisa's work, the exhibition will be up through the end of August of this year. So be sure to come and check it out. Also, check our website, avam.org, for more upcoming virtual and in-person programs that we have. So
Okay. Thank you.
thank you, everyone, for joining and have a great night.
And
Oh,
one more, Matthew, please don't forget to let them know about your art. You're a blooming folk
oh,
primitive artist. I love helping other artists, and he's wonderful. Thank you.
that's awesome. All right, thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye bye.